Hello and welcome. This is Bree Stedman, host of Own Your BS, the podcast, where your negative head talk and the bullshit stories you tell yourself become irrelevant and solution-focused create. Hello and welcome to episode number 16. I cannot believe we're up to episode 16. I say that every week, don't I? Because every week it just surprises me that another week's gone by and the numbers just keep escalating and growing, which is kind of exciting. I wanted to talk to you today about an experience that I have quite frequently that I feel you may also benefit from hearing about. Now, this has come as a result of me running a retreat a couple of weeks ago with some of my VIP Creatrix clients, and we were sharing life experiences and just talking like women do. This is one of the reasons why I love running retreats so much, because when you can escape the realities of life and put yourself into a bubble where you can just come back to center, come back to self and release any of the stuff that doesn't serve you, it really helps you to start analyzing what's truly important and what, BS you're actually buying into that doesn't serve you. And something that came up during one particular conversation was the perception that other people have of your BS and how you then handle that. And as a result of that, we then kind of migrated into this whole, what is the difference between staying stuck in your BS and choosing to gain emotional control, choosing to make decisions based on emotional control instead of buying into the BS. Now, this came as a result of something that I experience on a very frequent basis. As many of you who follow me would probably know, I frequently share real life stories about what's happening in my life, whether it's a challenge that I'm having with one of my kids or whether it's a business challenge or something that I'm just personally struggling with. And I share these stories mostly because I know that the more relatable a person of influence is, the more inspirational it ultimately becomes for the person following that influencer. And again, this comes from experience. When I worked in direct sales for 10 years, we were conditioned to behave in a way where if there were personal struggles going on, you leave the personal struggles at work and you always present your absolute best foot forward. And the problem that I had with that is that it almost put my success on a pedestal, because the people that I worked with instinctively felt that because I didn't have their life, they couldn't achieve the success that I had. So, that storyline of, well, it's all very well and good for you to say, just be positive, Bree, you don't know what I'm going through. And I know that I struggled with that exact same thing. For the people that I aspired to be, I had them set on such a high pedestal that I saw them as perfect. I saw them as never having challenges. So when I looked at their success compared to my own, I would instinctively do the same thing. It's all very well and good for you to have that kind of success, but you don't have the kids that I have. You don't have the circumstances that I had. Therefore, I could never have that success that you have. And so very early on in my career, I decided to not do that. I decided to show up as real, because I know that when I gained some sort of perspective of realness from the people that I followed, from the people that inspired me, it broke down that image of perfection, and it helped me to see that even the most successful people in the world have struggles, and those struggles are what actually make them to be more successful. So I ditched that mask of perfection, particularly around 2012, when I really just gave it all away, when I gave away that need to live behind a mask. So that leads me to this whole common experience that I go through quite frequently now. And that is when I do share something that's going on in my life. One of the most common responses that I hear either in private messages or in jest amongst verbal conversation is, well, Bree, are you owning your BS by telling that story? Now, secretly, this really shits me to tears, because firstly, I created the brand of Own Your BS as a stand for personal power and ownership, not as a stamp for me living a perfect life. I, just like you, am human. And part of the human experience is that we have struggles and challenges. We all go through moments where we experience negative emotions. Negative emotions are not a bad thing. They only become bad when we get stuck in them, when we create the stories that fuel them and keep us cycling in the same situations over and over again. And so when I share my struggles, it's to give you an inside glimpse of what real life for me looks like. And yes, I am owning my BS when I share these circumstances, because if you listen to the story as a whole, you'll know that I share my challenges, but more often than not, I also share how I go about overcoming the challenges, what strategies I use, what techniques I might rely on to bring myself to a space of emotional control. So, what is the difference between staying stuck in the BS, staying stuck in a space where you're just riding the sympathy wave, and using the BS as a method to gain emotional control? The difference is this: you may vent, you may share what happens in your life once or twice. You might talk to one of your best mates, or you might talk to someone that you really, really trust, while keeping an ear out for the lessons. But you don't go and repeat the story to the next set of ears, and then tell it again to a third set of ears, and then put it up on Facebook as a social media post to gain more sympathy or more attention. That is staying stuck in the BS, because you're not actually looking to improve the situation. Instead, you're looking to gain support or followers because the story is real and valid to you. Now, let me be clear about something here. A lot of the time, we're not even aware when we are in this habit. Prior to me completely owning my BS, I would share and reshare my stories because there was an unconscious desire that needed to be filled, which was to be validated, heard, and supported from external sources outside of self. Owning your BS is about being able to share the story with the intention to learn from it. And a lot of the time, when we actually share what's going on in our lives, when we talk about it to someone that we trust, when we're hearing the words that we're using that awareness, we can use that awareness to change our actions. And that ultimately is the framework of Own Your BS. If you're not aware of the program and the structure of the Own Your BS program, I'd just like to take this moment to break it down a little bit, because there are 3 significant phases to the Own Your BS process. The first one is awareness. Awareness comes through talking about your challenges, through using your journal and writing it down, to identifying and listening to the head talk that you're telling yourself to become aware of those common threads. That is the first step. That is not storytelling for negative attention. It's storytelling to look for a lesson. And sometimes that lesson comes from an observation outside of self. That's why we often share our stories with people that we trust and love. After we have become aware of what it is that we're saying to ourselves, we then need to act differently, because nothing changes if nothing changes. So if you tell the story, gain a bit of perspective, potentially learn a lesson, but instead of acting differently by letting the story go back and retell the story, you're just cycling. You're stuck in the BS. So to move out of the BS, we want to learn from it, we want to become aware of it, and then we want to choose actions that support change, actions that support growth. And that is where strategies like the balloon strategy that I've shared with you, or the expanded vision strategy that I also share, comes into play. Because when we relieve the emotional intensity of our stories, our actions and the choices that are available to us often open up. Now, once we have started to act differently, then we look at aligning our action with what is most important to us. And again, this is why I'm so passionate about highlighting to you what you value, what you prioritize. Just a couple of episodes ago, I did a whole episode on what is important to you. I gave you some analogies on how to juggle those things that are important to you so that you can focus on just 2 or 3 things at a time and really do those things well. When a woman acts from a space of alignment, the potential for conflict becomes less, because ultimately we make decisions based on what serves us, based on what makes us happy, based on what aligns with our truth, rather than just from convenience. So, owning your BS is about becoming aware, using that awareness to act differently, and then using those actions to align with what is most important to you. And the end result of aware, act, and align is emotional control. I hope that this has given you a little bit more clarity around getting stuck in the BS and choosing to follow a path of emotional control. I hope that it helps you to recognize the habit that you may get into when it comes to storytelling. And again, the first step is awareness. So the next time you catch yourself telling a story that maybe you've told a number of times in the past, make the decision in that moment that the awareness comes to you to stop and do something different. And it could be a simple matter of, you know what? I've actually told this story. I'm not going to go there again. How's your day been? Completely change the subject. It doesn't have to be an overly complicated action. It's just a change of action that is going to take you away from that negative headspace into something that is ultimately going to serve you a whole heap more. So I hope this helps. If you're interested in learning more about Own Your BS, the program, you can check out all of the information on my website, ownyourbs.com. There are a range of products and services designed with this concept in mind. Everything bringing you into awareness, creating more action for you, and aligning those things that are important to you so that you live your life from a basis of emotional control. And if you've been following me on social media and you're based in Australia, or if you love to travel, you may also be aware that I am running a retreat at the end of November for women who are really ready to embrace the Own Your BS philosophy. This is a 2-day retreat up at Port Stephens in New South Wales, just half an hour from the Newcastle airport. And over these 2 days, I'm going to share with you the philosophy of Own Your BS. I'm going to introduce those attendees to the female brain-specific modality Creatrix. This is the process that completely transforms the way that you hold on to that emotional baggage. And we're going to shift your attention so that from that moment forward, your actions are aligned with what is important to you. Now, this retreat is limited to only 4 women. So if it's something that interests you, please drop me an email or find me on social media and send me a PM. And I'll share the details with you for that space. Ultimately, from this point forward, remember, if you want to get out of the BS and into emotional control, to remember these 3 things. Become aware of what story you're telling. Become aware of how often you've said it, and become aware of whether or not it's actually serving you. Are you saying it for a lesson, or are you saying it for sympathy? Use that awareness that you then create to change action, to implement an action that allows you to grow or change direction away from the story. And sometimes those action steps are going to include strategies that are shared in Own Your BS. And I've shared 2 of them in this podcast. So go back through some of the old episodes and maybe have a listen. And lastly, how do the decisions that you make align with what is most important to you? If you really want to embrace a life of emotional control, the alignment to what's important to you is the most crucial element, because that alignment is going to keep you most away from conflict for the majority of the time. Remembering that life is going to happen. Sometimes we're going to get thrown a curveball that we don't anticipate, but when that happens, you just go back through the process. Aware, act, and align. So thank you so much for joining me for episode 16, the BS versus emotional control. I look forward to connecting with you again next week. I've got some really exciting topics coming up. So if you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, please subscribe so that you get the notifications when new episodes are released. And if you've been enjoying the episodes, remember to share them. There are many women in our world that are suffering from negative head talk. They just mask it better than others. So the more we start talking about the power of Own Your BS, the power of emotional control, the greater the ripple effect for the entire community is going to be. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you again next week.